Hi there! In this video, I'm going to share our knowledge of climbing physiology that we learned to go beyond physics. After climbing regularly for almost 5 years, we've been consistently and comfortably getting V5 and V6 both indoor and outdoor. Reaching to V5 and V6 level wasn't very difficult for me because I just needed to work on my basic fitness and upper body strength and power. I couldn't do a single pull-up when I started climbing, so simply climbing on a regular basis helped me develop my upper body muscle. On top of that, I tried to work on my basic fitness by running for a little bit and doing some workouts that everybody does. And that was enough to hit V5 and V6 level. But going beyond V6 is another story. We feel like we've been at this level for almost a year and we're hitting a plateau. To go beyond V6, we knew we had to be more knowledgeable and train differently. So we did an extensive study of climbing physiology to understand the science behind it and plan our training. Our study was based on so many sources like YouTube videos and different websites, but primarily based on this Eric Horst's book, which we definitely recommend if you want to dive into more details about nutrition and sports science in general. In this video, I'm going to give you a comprehensive summary of our study. That means this video is not meant to be a textbook of climbing physiology per se, but rather to share in our own language what we learned and what worked for us. So if you prefer old school climbing physiology 101, then I recommend you read books and magazines on your own, including Eric Horst's book. That being said, if you have been randomly doing weighted pull-ups and campus boarding simply because those are classic climbing training that everybody does, this video might help you get a better understanding of climbing science in a snapshot. Our future videos will cover our training plan that we came up on the basis of the content of this video, so stay tuned to get a more practical understanding later. So, climbing physiology breaks into three main categories: strength, power, and endurance. In a simple language, strength is the adaptability of the big muscle groups and the ability of your forearm and finger flexors to tolerate a big load. It also refers to how much your fingers can stand on a small edge. Power is about how quickly you can execute the move. It releases a high amount of energy involving quick and big moves. Endurance, in simple terms, is the ability to sustain your power and strength in an extended time. But that's the least trainable part of endurance, and that should be trained over many seasons and many years. Aerobic is the bone of endurance training, which is the ability to climb way below your limit repeatedly. Let's look at each component more closely. For the sake of simplicity, we divide strength into two groups: pull-up muscles and forearm and finger flexors. Strength in pull-up muscles refers to developing your bigger muscle groups to make harder, bigger moves at your maximum capacity. There are different kinds of training you can do to develop your pull-up muscle groups, such as weighted pull-ups and lock-off training. Such training will help you to pull from a grip and lock off to reach the next hold. So for example, me not being able to do a single pull-up 5 years ago, but now carrying 10 pounds to do a single pull-up is an excellent example of improving pull-up muscles. Forearm and finger strength is the ability to hang or hold on a small edge. It doesn't involve big muscles, but it's mostly on your forearm or fingers. This very simple strength is obviously trained with hangboarding, as long as it's not making you pumped and it's at a very high intensity for a few seconds with sufficient rest. Again, there are so many protocols and training plans to develop your finger and forearm strength, but in a nutshell, for experienced climbers, having some weights and hanging on a tiny edge for a few seconds is the way to train the forearm and finger strength. One thing to note is that to train strength properly, the training should be at your maximum ability and last for a few seconds with sufficient rest between sets to recover. For example, you don't want to add a 20-pound weight and perform 100 pull-ups because that will become an endurance training. Power involves big muscle groups, and it sounds similar to pull-up strength, but the difference is that power involves quick move. So your strength times speed is the power. When you moonboard or bouldering on a steep wall, you might realize that you're often dynamically reaching to the next hold instead of going static by locking off. And that is power. It's all about performing your maximum strength within the millisecond of going to the next hold. So yes, your power correlates to your strength, and that's why it's important to have a good strength training background before training power. Therefore, power training often involves big, quick moves in a matter of few seconds. Campus laddering is one training we did. You skip and make big moves on campus boards as fast as you can in a few seconds. After working on your power, you're obviously gonna be able to make a big, powerful moves. Endurance is about how long you can sustain your power and strength. So if you're talking about finger strength, how long you can climb on tiny crimps is the strength endurance. On the other hand, if you're talking about power, it's about performing dynamic moves back to back. Common training for endurance is 4x4, but do you know if you're working on strength endurance or power endurance? Strength endurance is the most classic what we call endurance in the context of getting pumped. Finger strength endurance can be trained using, again, hangboard, but this time hang longer with a shorter interval between sets with no or light weights. We also trained our strength endurance by getting on the tread wall repeatedly using only crimps. This training is common especially for sport climbing to be able to climb long, pumpy lead routes. On the other hand, if you're talking about power endurance, it's about performing dynamic moves back to back, so you'll be able to do hard boulders for many hours. If you improve your power endurance, your big muscle groups can sustain longer and you can work on your favorite bouldering route longer. A popular way to train for power endurance is 4x4, but make sure your routes have big moves. If your 4x4 routes are rather crimpy and pumpy, you're working on your strength endurance, not power. So if you're doing 4x4 to train power endurance, you pick 4 bouldering routes that require big dynamic moves, but you can comfortably climb. So if your limit bouldering is V6, you should pick problems in the range of V3 to V4 and repeat each route 4 times within 4 minutes. In this way, you're working on your big muscles, not your forearm or finger. But if you want to work on your forearm or finger endurance with 4x4, then pick crimpy routes instead. Finally, the critical component of endurance is aerobic capacity. Aerobic is about how long you can keep climbing way below your limit. For example, the hardest moves on the 511A route, which could be 90 feet long outdoor, is at V2 or V3 level at the middle or top. It is your aerobic capacity that lets you get to the top. V2 or V3 moves do not necessarily make you pumped, but one of the reasons you fall is a lack of aerobic capacity. When you do routes at your limit, most of the hard moves are carried by your strength and power. But other moves can be way below your limit, V2 and V3s, and being able to keep climbing those moves is aerobic. Our aerobic training was climbing 5.9s and 5.10s back to back in the gym. One day we climbed almost 20 routes, which made us so tired. It's the most boring training, but it pays off particularly for sport climbing. Now, I hope you have a better understanding of the 3 most important components in climbing physiology. In summary, strength is about how much force you can generate with either your pull-up muscles or finger and forearm, regardless of the time it takes. Power is about how quickly you can execute your strength, and it usually involves big, quick moves. Endurance is how long you can sustain your strength and power. But when we're talking about strength endurance and power endurance, we're mainly talking about climbing on hard moves. So make sure that you also have a good aerobic capacity to keep climbing easy moves. Working on these three components is essential to go beyond V6. Sahan and I just completed our seasonal training that focused on these three components, and we're hoping to perform stronger this coming year. In future videos, we're gonna introduce our training plan on the basis of the content of this video, so please subscribe to stay tuned. And thank you for watching.